The only real difference between him and Basil is that he was small and had a very large hen-pecking wife.
It's been called the single greatest sitcom ever created, a work of such tightly wound, perfectly calibrated comedic genius that, for many, it's never been topped. 12 episodes. That's all it took to cement its legacy. 12 episodes of pure chaotic perfection, Fawlty Towers. But within that perfect run, there's one episode and one scene in particular that became so infamous, so debated, it did the unthinkable. It got Fawlty Towers taken off the air. This is the moment that sparked a firestorm. A scene so controversial that decades after it first aired, broadcasters pulled the plug, igniting a culture war that's still raging today. But the real story, why it was removed, and the chaos that followed is far more complex and, frankly, far more interesting than you've been told. This isn't just about a controversial joke. It's a story about comedic intent versus modern sensibilities, the shifting lines of censorship, and how we should deal with art from a different time. So, let's break down the moment that put a television masterpiece in the crosshairs and uncover the truth behind why one of the greatest sitcoms of all time suddenly vanished from the airwaves. To really get the gravity of this controversy, you have to understand what Fawlty Towers represents. It's not just some old sitcom. For many, it's the absolute pinnacle of the form. Back in 2000, the British Film Institute polled a massive group of industry professionals, the people who make, critique, and run television, to name the 100 greatest British television programs of all time. And sitting at number 1, Fawlty Towers. Think about that. Ahead of decades of legendary dramas, groundbreaking documentaries, and other iconic comedies, this little show about a hellish hotel, with just 12 episodes, was crowned the undisputed champion. The show aired in 2 quick bursts, 6 episodes in 1975 and another 6 in 1979. It was the brainchild of John Cleese, already a global superstar from Monty Python's Flying Circus, and his then-wife, Connie Booth, who also played the long-suffering but brilliantly capable waitress, Polly. But unlike Python's surreal, freewheeling anarchy, Fawlty Towers was a different beast. It was a farce, but a meticulously constructed one. Each episode was a masterclass in screenwriting. The scripts were reportedly twice as long as atypical sitcoms, packed with intricate plotting, layered misunderstandings, and dialogue polished to a razor's edge. Cleese and Booth would spend months crafting a single episode, sometimes going through 10 drafts until every beat, every line, and every catastrophic outcome was perfect. The result was a pressure cooker of comedy. The hotel itself, with its mismatched guests, Basil's domineering wife Sybil, and the hopelessly confused Spanish waiter, Manuel, was a crucible of frustration, seemingly designed to push its proprietor to the absolute brink. And at the center of that storm was Basil Fawlty. Basil is more than a character. He's a force of nature, a seething, snobbish, misanthropic vortex of rage and anxiety, trapped in a profession he despises, the service industry. He's a man who believes, with every fiber of his being, that he is superior to everyone around him, yet he's constantly thwarted by his own incompetence, his cowardice, and the sheer indignity of having to be pleasant to people he can't stand. And Basil wasn't entirely fiction. He was born from a very real, and very miserable, hotel stay. In the early 1970s, the Monty Python team was filming in the English seaside town of Torquay, and checked into a hotel called the Gleneagles. The proprietor was one Donald Sinclair, a retired naval officer who ran his establishment with a truly breathtaking level of hostility. John Cleese later described Sinclair as the most wonderfully rude man I have ever met. The stories from that short stay are legendary. Sinclair apparently criticized Terry Gilliam's To American Table Manners. When Eric Idle left his briefcase at reception, Sinclair, convinced a ticking alarm clock inside was a bomb, threw it over a wall into the garden. He seemed to operate on the belief that he could run the hotel just fine if it weren't for the guests. While the rest of the Python team fled in disgust after one night, Cleese and Connie Booth stayed on, utterly fascinated. They saw the comedic gold in this man, a figure so spectacularly ill-suited to his job. And just like that, Donald Sinclair became Basil Fawlty. This blend of real-life absurdity and obsessive craftsmanship made Fawlty Towers feel perfect. The show never outstayed its welcome, and never had a bad season or a chance to go downhill. Cleese and Booth made 12 flawless episodes, and then, they just stopped. They quit at the absolute zenith of their creative powers, preserving the show's legacy as an untouchable masterpiece. Or, so they thought, because decades later, one of those perfect episodes would be dragged back into the spotlight and deemed so offensive, it had to be erased. The episode at the heart of the storm is the 6th of the first series, which first aired on October 24, 1975. Its title is simply, The Germans. Even before the controversy, it stood as one of the most iconic and brilliantly constructed episodes of the entire series. The premise, like all great farces, is a slow, methodical tightening of a screw until the pressure becomes unbearable and everything explodes. The episode opens with Sybil, Basil's formidable wife, heading to the hospital for a few days for a minor operation. Her absence removes the one force that can usually keep Basil's worst impulses in check. Before leaving, she gives him simple tasks: run a fire drill and hang a moose head on the wall. For a normal person, this is a to-do list. For Basil Fawlty, it's a series of Herculean labors fraught with peril. The chaos builds immediately. The fire drill is a symphony of escalating failure. Then, a real fire breaks out in the kitchen, but Basil, oblivious, assures the panicking guests it's just part of the drill. The sequence climaxes with Basil getting a face full of fire extinguisher foam, blinding him, which leads to him taking a tumble and ending up in the hospital with a concussion. This is the critical plot point. The Basil, who returns to the hotel to deal with the titular German guests, is not just stressed out Basil, he is concussed Basil, his already tenuous grip on social decorum completely gone. The doctor's orders are clear: rest. But with a group of German guests arriving, Basil sneaks out of the hospital and races back, head bandaged, mind scrambled. This is where the episode's infamous refrain begins. Gathering his staff, Basil's one overriding instruction is simple, yet impossible for him to follow: don't mention the war. He repeats it with escalating intensity, convinced any reference to World War II will cause irreparable offense. The irony, of course, is that no one else was even thinking about it. The obsession is entirely his. As John Cleese has explained, the joke was never about mocking Germans. It was about mocking the peculiar British obsession with the war. It was satire aimed at people like Basil, who are so buried in the past they can't function in the present. The German guests arrive. They are polite, friendly, and patient, the perfect straight men for the insanity to come. Basil, concussed and fixated, tries to take their dinner order, and his brain betrays him. Every other word is a war-related Freudian slip. Prawn cocktail becomes a manic interrogation about Eva Prawn. Pickled herring is twisted into Hermann Goring. The guests grow increasingly confused and alarmed. When one young woman starts to cry, Basil comforts her by whispering, "You started it. You invaded Poland." It is a complete and utter meltdown, culminating in the scene's unforgettable climax. Exasperated, Basil holds his finger under his nose like a mustache, extends his arm in a salute, and performs a ridiculous, flailing goose. Around the dining room, it was hailed as one of the funniest moments in television history. But hidden within this same episode was another, much quieter moment. A piece of dialogue that 45 years later would cause the Germans to be scrubbed from the airwaves. While Basil's Hitler impression is the scene everyone remembers, it wasn't what got the show taken off the air. The controversy that erupted in the 21st century came from a much shorter and, for many years, largely overlooked exchange with one of the hotel's permanent residents, the elderly, senile Major Gowan. The Major is a key character here. He's a relic of the British Empire, an old soldier whose mind is stuck in a bygone era. He's mostly a gentle, amiable character, but his senility also makes him a vessel for the prejudices of his time. He's not a hero, he's a fossil, and the show presents him as such. The scene happens early in the episode. The Major is telling Basil a story about going to a cricket match and uses two different, deeply offensive racial slurs. For decades, this moment was understood in its satirical context. The joke isn't the slurs, the joke is on the Major. We are laughing at his pathetic, out-of-touch bigotry, not with him. John Cleese has been unequivocal on this point. The Major was an old fossil left over from decades before. We were not supporting his views, we were making fun of them. He argued that if people are too stupid to see that, then meaningful satire becomes impossible, and for 45 years, that understanding held. The show was repeated endlessly and celebrated worldwide. Then came June of 2020. The world was in a state of profound social upheaval following the murder of George Floyd, which sparked global Black Lives Matter protests. This led to a powerful and overdue reckoning with racism and historical injustice. In the entertainment world, streaming services began reviewing their back catalogs. Shows like Little Britain * were removed for using blackface, and HBO Max temporarily pulled Gone with the Wind. It was in this highly charged atmosphere that UK TV, a digital channel owned by the BBC, made its move. On June 11, 2020, the Germans vanished from its streaming service. The move was made specifically because of the Major's dialogue. A spokesperson stated, "The episode contains racial slurs, so we are taking the episode down while we review it. We are particularly aware of the impact of outdated language," and just like that, it happened. A scene written in 1975 had in fact gotten Fawlty Towers taken off the air. The controversy wasn't about a show being cancelled in its prime. It was about a beloved classic being rejudged by the standards of a new era, sparking a furious debate about censorship, context, and comedy itself. The removal of the Germans ignited an immediate and intense backlash. The person leading the charge was, unsurprisingly, John Cleese. He was incandescent. He called the decision stupid and cowardly, accusing BBC executives of trying to pacify a few people to hang on to their jobs. He passionately defended the episode and the principle of satire, telling one newspaper, "If you put nonsense words into the mouth of someone you want to make fun of, you're not broadcasting their views. You're making fun of them." He argued that literal-minded people don't get irony, and if comedy has to cater to them, then most of it would have to go. He made it clear he supported the core message of the Black Lives Matter movement but felt this energy was being misdirected into performative censorship that missed the artistic point. Many critics and viewers rushed to his defense. The argument was simple. Fawlty Towers wasn't promoting racism, it was mocking it. To remove the episode was to fundamentally misunderstand it. The pressure on UK TV was immense. Just 2 days after pulling the episode, the broadcaster reversed its decision. On June 13th, The Germans was reinstated, but with a new warning about offensive content and language. This warning label approach has since become a common, if still debated, compromise for legacy content. The incident became a flashpoint in a much larger cultural debate. Where is the line between preserving art and acknowledging that some parts may be deeply offensive to modern audiences? The Fawlty Towers case highlights the core dilemma: intent versus impact. The writer's intent was to satirize bigotry. However, for some viewers, the impact of hearing racial slurs, regardless of context, is still hurtful. This firestorm also reignited a popular misconception about why Fawlty Towers ended in the first place. The show's short run has always been a source of fascination, but the truth is more human and poignant. It didn't end because of outrage or network disputes. It ended because John Cleese and Connie Booth had given it everything they had. The writing was famously grueling. On top of that, by the time they started the second series, their marriage was over. Imagine the emotional strain of collaborating on a high-pressure project with your recent ex-spouse, writing for characters in a famously dysfunctional marriage. The BBC was desperate for a third series, but Cleese and Booth declined. They felt they had taken the characters as far as they could go without repeating themselves. They chose to end it on a high. The show didn't end with a bang of controversy, but with the quiet, courageous decision of its creators to let perfection stand. So, did a single scene take Fawlty Towers off the air for good? In a way, yes, but only for about 48 hours. 45 years after it was made, a scene featuring the racist ramblings of a senile major did cause the show to be temporarily pulled from a streaming service in a moment of intense cultural revaluation. The incident turned one of comedy's most beloved episodes into a flashpoint in the culture wars. But the real story of why Fawlty Towers isn't on our screens anymore, why no new episodes were ever made, has nothing to do with controversy. It ended because of the creative integrity of its writers. John Cleese and Connie Booth poured their collective genius into 12 perfect episodes and then made the incredibly difficult decision to walk away to protect their creation. They chose quality over quantity, perfection over profit. The story of The Germans isn't a simple tale of a problematic show. It's the story of how art, created to mock prejudice, can itself become the subject of a fierce debate about that very prejudice. It shows that the meaning of art is never static. It's constantly renegotiated by new generations with new perspectives. And that leaves us with the big question. What do you think? Should classic shows with scenes that are offensive by today's standards be edited or removed? Or should they be preserved as they were, trusting that audiences can understand context and satire? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into television history, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the shows you love. Thanks for watching.